You ought to be in pictures. You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a...
Hello and welcome to Deep Dive Movie Reviews with my friend Steve Hackman and myself, James Marsh. This episode, we're discussing S.S. Rajamouli's Tollywood epic, RRR.
Hey, but before we begin our discussion of RRR, if you haven't already subscribed to Deep Dive Movie Reviews, it would do us a great favor if you did that. And also like the video, share it. You know, a lot of people have a lot of love for RRR. Feel free to share it with friends you think may enjoy this film. James?
Okay, so RRR is set in India during the British occupation in 1920. It's based in a real period of time with real life characters, but is essentially a fictitious story filling in the gaps of the early wilderness years of a couple of future Indian revolutionaries. You got Bheem, played by N.T. Rama Rao Jr., and also Ram, played by Ram Charan. Now, the action sort of kicks into action when a small village girl, Mali, is kidnapped by Ray Stevenson's awful, terrible, no good British governor, Buxton, and his wife, played by Alison Doody. This sets into motion a cataclysmic chain of events that sees Bheem sent out to track her down, whilst at the same time Ram is sent by the British police force to go and find Bheem, setting these two men on a collision course that, let's be honest, has some unlikely outcomes. So, Steve, where to even begin with this one?
James, I can't even tell you. I'm still trying to process this film. It is so big. It is so glorious. You know, and it rolls up so many genres in one. It is an action film, but it is the biggest action film. It is a buddy flick, but it is the biggest buddy flick. It's a romantic comedy at certain parts. It's this movie takes so many things I love about film, and in the immortal words of Nigel Tufnell from Spinal Tap, takes it to 11.
Exactly. What we do is, if we need that extra push over the cliff, you know what we do?
Put it up to 11.
11, exactly. One lap.
You know, you just got to think that S.S. Rajamouli is thinking, well, if I got a 10 on this, a 10 on this, and 10 on this, and I where do I go from here? You go to 11. This film goes to 11.
Absolutely. This one blows the amps, I think is fair to say. I mean, this is something I love about Bollywood movies and Indian cinema in general. I mean, this is Tollywood, got to say, not Bollywood. You know, you see this in Hong Kong cinema sometimes, but no one does it better than Indian cinema, where they just throw in everything with the kitchen sink. Like you said, it's an action movie, it's a rom-com, it's a historical drama. It's all of these things, and flits seamlessly from one genre to another. And even when the scenes aren't that seamless, it doesn't care. It will take a hard left, a hard right, from graphic, violent action to romance to comedy on the turn of a dime, and they don't care, and it works because there's such an enthusiasm, a shameless bombast,
right, to
just the scope and the scale upon which this story is told. Like, I think what you're saying is absolutely right. You know, this is cranked up so high that these are the extremes of all of these emotions and all of these story beats. So let's be honest, the story itself is pretty simple to follow. It's pretty straightforward. You've just got two guys set on a collision course for each other who become friends before they realize that they're actually supposed to be enemies. And ultimately their friendship wins out, and they align their interests and go after the real baddies, which, let's be honest, are the British.
Absolutely. You know, and let's face it, in this movie, they take the gloves off of every stereotype. Like I've seen movies where the British colonials are portrayed as the evil colonialists, but there's a measure of sympathy. There's always some good, there's some mixture of the good and bad. In this movie, again, because everything goes to 11, these aren't level 10 racist. These Brits are the most racist. They say the most horrific things. And we went to go see it live with many members of the Indian community here in Hong Kong. And I jokingly said to you, I want to jump up and tell everybody, I'm sitting next to a Brit, nail him, you know?
Yeah, you know, we get this lot, and rightly so. You know, you see this in Hong Kong cinema as well, you know what, because of the colonial history there. You know, we're used to being the bad guys, even in Hollywood movies when we're not identified as being British. It's still British actors portraying the bad guys. There's something that we're either super debonair and super classy, or we're stone cold evil. And
again,
there's no middle ground.
You know, Alison Doody's wife to Governor Scott, played by Ray Stevenson. These two are the Macbeth and Lady Macbeth taken to level 15. I mean, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are sympathetic figures compared to these two. These two are evil. They are sadistic. And so every time when we finally get that catharsis at the end of this film, where not only are they killed, but this whole monumental castle they have built in India just explodes, implodes, falls in on itself. There's this euphoric catharsis of, yes, good has triumphed, evil has been vanquished. And I know it's like you said earlier, that it has kind of a simple expression of that, but it is so human. It is so, I felt so good at the end of this movie.
Oh, me too. You know, and it, you know, it ends with the British characters being buried and murdered, and it's just like, yes, I'm all for it. You know, there is,
and I'm a pacifist at heart. You know,
oh, of course, but this is what this kind of storytelling can do. You know, and it does it. You know, it does it in a very I don't mean painless. What do I mean? It's all good-natured fun at the end of the day. You know, this isn't really sort of jingoistic filmmaking trying to stir up anti-British sentiment in its audience or anything like that. This is cartoon villainy. You know, Ray Stevenson and Alison Doody are vile caricatures. You know, there's no nuance, but they just want a black and white sort of good versus evil kind of story. And it's great. It's easy. The British are right there. You know, they have the history of exploitation in the country and colonialism. We just use that, and no one has a problem. I can't imagine any British person having a problem with that whatsoever, nor really any Indian audience member being driven into a into a violent rage by this. I mean, this is all good, clean fun. This is like Rocky IV. You know, it's just the US versus the Soviet Union, and it's all fair game.
We all leave the theater, everybody's friends. We had a great time.
Absolutely.
I want to say, though, the first 40 minutes of this or so, about half an hour, 40 minutes of this film comes before the title cards, and we're introduced to 3 little mini episodes which set the stage for what we're going to see in the rest of the film. And in that 40 minutes, I could have just had that 40 minutes as a film unto itself and could have left the theater with this spring in my step, because the first episode sets the stage of this lovely young little girl who's got a beautiful voice, who gets kidnapped by the evil governor and the wife because, you know, they love her voice. They just want to take her as a trophy and bring her home. And,
absolutely. She's a trophy.
Just put her on the mantelpiece. I think she says at some point.
Yeah.
They say the most racist things to the mother. They beat her over the head. I mean, there's just this tragic issue. So they introduce that. And it's so over the top that you're going, where is this film going to go from here? And then they introduce Ram Charan, who plays this Indian who's a member of the colonial forces. And that scene where the military commander says he wants this instigator who's in this crowd of like 300 rioters. He wants that guy. Oh, Ram just puts on his hat, goes out there, and in one of the most incredible endurance feats I've ever seen filmed, takes on 300 men at the same time. And it's
insane. I remember telling you,
absolute insane. Yeah. What did you?
I remember telling you after the movie, I was like, it reminded me of the Battle of the Bastards in Game of Thrones. Just that sense of claustrophobia where he's entirely surrounded and buried by these rioters, and the camera's right under there with him, and he keeps his composure, and then one by one, he just sees off this entire swarm of
gets that guy,
of rioters,
brings him back into the compound, puts him down, and I'm like, this is incredible. And then it goes to the third the third little installment, where the character of Beam is introduced, and he's fighting a wolf and a tiger in one of the most intense, exciting scenes I've ever seen filmed. And
he's literally going hand to hand with a tiger. Yeah, it's brilliant.
You know, and like yourself, James, you and I have seen a lot of films. We've seen a lot of exciting films. We've seen a lot of action-packed films. I think you can hear from the enthusiasm of my voice. I was seeing things in this movie I'd never seen before with such an intensity. And you said earlier the term cartoonish. And we don't mean that in any negative term whatsoever. If anything,
absolutely not.
One of the things that helped me with is I've critiqued films in the past, even on this show, that don't have a tether to reality, and so they lose me. And this film should have been something that lost me because of the lack of tether to reality. And yet, because they didn't even try to acknowledge that a flat surface of grounding existed to begin with. It was
reality as we know it does not really
exist. I mean, these two men, they're not human. I mean, yes, they're human, but they are Achilles and they're Hercules. They are demi-human. They are children of the gods. They have superhuman strength. They have superhuman endurance. They have superhuman emotions. And we just have to take that for what it is at face value.
Yeah, no, this, I mean, it reminded me of many things and many different filmmakers. You know, it's such a sort of melee of different sort of styles and influences. But one that really struck me is how this feels visually and thematically akin to what Zack Snyder was trying to do in his Justice League movie, and by extension, the other films that he directed in that series, where he's taking these characters and he's raising them up to the level of gods. You know, he's telling these stories of these mythic, superhuman characters, as you were just saying, and in that case it's Batman and it's Superman and what have you, but here it's these two men who, you know, one of them is a sort of protector of a village and the other one at first glance is kind of the ultimate sort of pit bull. You know, he is the guy who has gone over to the opposition, and he is the ultimate kind of fighting dog for the Raj, if you like. But obviously, as the story progresses, we realize that he is not that character. He is something other. He is something greater and far more symbolic of the same fight that Beam is trying to fight on an even bigger level, perhaps. But you know, so when you see these characters, they're indestructible. You know, Ram in particular, he gets beaten, stabbed on more than one occasion, bitten by a poisonous snake, dragged through the mud, beaten up, and he just keeps on going. He is just an indomitable hero, and Beam is every bit his equal. And I thought it was quite telling that in the opening section that you're talking about, which is divided into three parts, the caption, the title cards, if you like, for those three sections are essentially the story. You know, it's that simple. It's little girl gets kidnapped. That's the plot. You know, and these two guys are sent after. And then you have the fire, which is Ram, and the water, which is Beam. You know, they are kind of yin yang. They are elemental forces, you know, that exist above and beyond sort of our human plane of existence. They fight for something greater with powers that are something greater, and they are sort of competing and contrasting. You know, they're complementary and contrasting elements as well. So, you know, if brought together in the right way, they will be a formidable force for good, or for a single trajectory. But they can also have the capabilities to sort of clash and wipe each other out.
Yeah, and what you said is just exemplified by when they initially meet to save that young boy who's drowning after the train explosion.
Amazing.
That whole scene and how they identify one another, and they instantly realize they're on the same wavelengths. Whatever cosmic forces give them their demi-human status, they are almost telegraphing their intentions to one another. They're giving sign language to one another of how they're going to rescue this boy. And I'd be thinking, if somebody was giving me the same sign language, I'd be going, what? I'm supposed to go this way? Wait, say that again? Where they're just, zoom, 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 zoom. And it was just such a ballet of emotions, of connectivity, of in the midst of them saving this young boy, and really setting the stage for this the foundation of this friendship.
Yeah, there's a kind of synergy. I mean, they literally, their eyes meet across a crowded space. He's up on the bridge, he's over on the banks of the river. They've never met, they don't know each other, and yet from this distance they lock eyes. A few hand signals later, they're swinging under the bridge together, supporting each other's weight.
Yes.
In this kind of perfect counterbalance, which only underscores the fact that these two are two sides of the same coin. This is Al Pacino and Robert De Niro in Heat. This is
Yeah.
these are the same. They are opposites and equals simultaneously, and it's a beautiful, almost wordless introduction.
Absolutely, I totally agree with what you just said, and it's a real credit to the director S.S. Rajamouli, and I believe his father is the screenwriter for it. That it's not just a choreographed action sequence, but like you said, it really sets the stage that this is fire and water. This is yin and yang. They are counterbalancing each other's weight in order to achieve the goals that they need to achieve. It's not just haphazard. They have to be in synergy and unity. And so there's a lot of thought, even despite, like you mentioned, a very linear storyline that's simple and very straightforward. There's so much that is visually being represented at different times that it's the word spectacle comes to my mind when I describe this film. This film is a spectacle.
Oh yeah, very, very much so. I mean, this is visual storytelling. I mean, the phrase that was in my head as I was watching it, I was like, this is kind of pure
Mm-hmm.
cinema. This is that you could not tell this story in any other medium with this impactfully. You need this synergy of images and music and bombast. I've used that word already, but it's so exhilarating and over the top and just explosive. And you're right. I think his father has written for him before. I think his father came up with the original idea for Bahubali as well, which is Rajamouli's previous work. It's a massive 2-part historical epic, even arguably even more ambitious than this one, but it works. It's mythology, and although we're used to mythology and myths being told in the ancient history, in this kind of elemental past, before everything got complicated by civilization and technology and what have you. So it was larger than life beings drawing their power from the earth itself and from nature itself. Right. So, and it's something that the film harked back to again and again and again in the big final showdown, where you get these long drawn out slow-mo sort of poses. You see Ram with the fire and he's holding like these fiery torches and everything's exploding behind him. And then you see Beam and he's over by the fountain that is exploding. He's grabbed hold of the hoses and he's like whipping. Yeah. So he is water and Ram is fire. And they appear like sort of gods.
Yes.
Like something out of sort of Greek mythology or out of the Mahabharata or something like that. And you're like, okay, this is really, primary color messaging, and it's as basic good and evil as you can possibly get. And it's so powerful. It's so impactful because it's so unsubtle, unnuanced. You could easily get it wrong. Mm-hmm. And it just come across as clumsy and cliched and trite. And I think that's where Rajamouli's skill is really most clearly defined, is how grand and important he makes these very, very simple statements feel.
Yeah, no, this movie was handled in such a deft way because it easily could have become a cheesy caricature had it tilted in one direction or the other, but it doesn't. It maintains this wonderful constant throughout the whole film. Just coming back to the fire and water, just the whole visual of when they come together to rescue the boy, the water's on fire. The petrol has exploded
because they're working
together. They're working together. The water's on fire. They're able to each do that. And I'm jumping to the conclusion of the film, I'm no expert on Indian deities, but the whole obvious, these mythic characters begin to assume these mythic qualities when he goes into the temple of the gods and gets the attire and the bow and the arrow of obviously this mythic deity, and he becomes the personification of this deity as he's meting out justice on
I think they even
you evil Brits.
yeah. I think it even says that he kind of almost assumes the image of Shiva or something like that in
I think
the
chorus. The chorus.
There's a song, right?
Yeah, it's like
I remember
Greek
that,
chorus in the background, like these two wonderful men who will know which way they are going to go. One is fire, one is water. There's this, and again, that could be cheesy, and yet it wasn't.
No, it feels epic. It feels
grand. Yes.
Yeah. No, yeah, it absolutely does, and the fact that he's able to maintain that degree of scale of of sort of epic scale as he moves from one genre to another. One of these standout scenes in the movie is sort of the first real big song and dance number, which is at the party.
Yes,
that Beam has been invited to by the hopelessly clueless Jenny. Or to give her full name, don't call me Mem Sayab, it's just Jenny, okay?
and that's what made it a romantic comedy, because it was really funny for a big section of the film as well.
Absolutely. And she's completely clueless that she doesn't understand. I mean, the idea is obviously that she doesn't care and that she doesn't see color or anything like that, and that she is attracted to this guy and that's all that's important. But everybody around her is an impossibly bigoted racist.
Yeah.
And
there's one good white person in this film.
Sure. And she's oblivious to the fact that she's the only one.
Yes. In fact, she's shocked to find out there's racism going on in her tribe,
Yeah, she is completely appalled that when she invites Beam and his friend to her all-white party, that he is not welcomed with open arms by everybody, particularly by her other suitors. Right. And and it leads to this incredible dance-off where Ram steps up to support his slightly sort of uncultured friend, shall we say? Right. Beam's the country hick, if you like, and Ram is the guy who he can speak English. He knows his way around the British. He knows how to navigate the minefield, if you like, because he works for them. But he's able to position Beam in such a way that he can show off his greatest talents and his skills, which is this incredible dance number.
Was that dance number, the ferocity of the dance? It was just, I could rewatch. In fact, I've gone to YouTube and rewatched that.
Yeah, me too. I showed it to my wife first thing this morning. I was like, you have to watch this.
I showed it to my wife. I showed it to, I think I posted it on Facebook because somebody, when I posted that we're going to see it, was asking, even though it's an action film, is there also some musical numbers? I said, not only is there a musical numbers, but there's a dance off in this that is, just incredible, where it actually turns into, again, a fight against the British. They turn a dance number into a fight against the British.
Oh, absolutely.
Colonialism, I should say. Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. But it's as potent and powerful as anything you would see in any kind of sort of gangland standoff or dance off or Wild West shootout or anything. This is the dueling banjos, this is Pistols at Dawn, and they're doing it with like one ankle held behind them and a hand behind their head, and these I'm not going to try, but these movements are incredible.
And this is a small point, is these men are so larger than life. I've in my regular world, I've often argued one of the problems in this world is insecurity and the need for our ego to supersede. And it's really just a projection of our insecurity. What I loved in this dance number is Ram. It comes down to everybody else is out of this, even the Englishman who's going to beat them at their own dance. They're all fall by the wayside, and Beam and Ram are just like going at it. It is just pulsatingly energized. And Ram looks over at the girl and sees how much Beam wants to impress her. And so he throws the dance. Like, these are two competitive men
Oh, sure.
And yet they love
they're
each
the only
other
two
so
left,
much.
they have to, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, and again, it's just a small point, but for me, it's those kind of little moments that can make a movie for me. That's true friendship, that is true suppressing of the ego for the benefit of someone else. I don't have to be the star here. I can let my friend be the star, and that way he can maybe look good in front of the girl. I'll throw the race.
Oh, absolutely. And that followed on from I think it's after they rescue the boy, there is like a buddy montage sequence that would in any other movie be kind of like the romantic courtship montage between, you know, your protagonist and his lady love, you know, once they first hook up. But it's done with the same degree of affection, you know, in terms of filmmaking, you know, and sincerity. But it's just two guys having a whale of a time of finding what they have in common. You know, Beam drives a motorbike, Ram rides a horse, which is an interesting inversion, I think, because Beam is the country guy. He's the more feral of the two, and the more attuned with animals, and yet he's the guy on the motorbike rather than the guy on the horse. And then the civilized city guy, if you like, to strip them down even further, is the guy on the horse rather than on the vehicle, which I was like, okay, well, that's an interesting way of sort of further complicating and intertwining their personas. It's like, yeah, they are multifaceted, even in fairly simple ways.
You could look at it as Ram needs to return after this time being exposed to the colonials to his primal energy, his primal roots, whereas Beam, he's already in tune with those, and he needs to be well-rounded and explore this new technological. Of course, I'm reading way too much into this. Let me switch gears here for a second. One, I'm so glad, even though this film is coming to Netflix shortly, we didn't wait, and we took advantage of seeing it on the big screen here in Hong Kong, because this film, if I'd seen this only on my TV, it would have been a different experience. This film, if you have a chance to see it on the big screen, please do. The other thing I wanted to mention too is the moment that you really laughed out loud, and I could tell you had a big moment, was at the big party in the middle where the truck zooms in and opens up, and all of these just feral animals, tigers, you know, leopards, everything just comes out of this truck and starts eating all the party guests. And you just went, I forget the expression you used. I remember thinking, oh, James really liked that moment.
Yeah, it's the moment when they the truck that's got a big what do you call it?
It's like a transport truck, and it's got the canvas over the top, so
the
you can't see
canvas
what's
over
in
it, and it kind of pulls a handbrake turn, and then the canvas flies off, and it's all these cages underneath. It's like the circus came to town, you know, and you've got lions and tigers and deer and you know, all of these things, and they all have a sort of an aligned purpose. They all just like leap out and kind of go nuts. I kind of love that.
Yeah, you just got to love any movie where the star can pick up a leopard, throw it at the bad guy, and then the leopard tears into the bad guy. It's like, I've never seen that done in a film before.
Yeah, no, that was pretty incredible. Or when you realize just how sort of wild and untrained these animals are, because a moment later, the tiger sort of turns on Beam for a second and comes charging towards him, and Beam has to slide under him.
Yeah.
And the tiger leaps on the guy behind him instead. You know, it's operating at such an extreme level throughout. I could spend probably more than the film's 3 hours cherry picking back through all the moments that made me, you know, pick my jaw up off the floor, just from the sheer audacity of what they were putting on screen and going, oh yeah, we're going to do this now. Yeah. And you're going to love it.
You're thinking after the first 40 minutes, how can they top this? And then they do. And it slows down a little bit in the middle to build a little story and a little of the tension, obviously, as they discover that they're on opposite sides of this issue. And but boy, I tell you, when the energy picks up again, it's just over the top. It's explosive.
Right.
And I love the word you use, audacious. This is an audacious movie.
It's so bold and brazen. I mean, you're absolutely right. There's a period in the middle where it kind of shifts down a gear, because there's this sense of mystery over Ram's character. We know that he's a cop, and he's a committed cop, and we see he's frustrated that he gets passed over for promotion early on, and so he volunteers to be the guy to go after this rebel, because it will mean a promotion. And you're like, what's this guy's deal? Because although yes, there were a lot of Indian recruits in the British services, there is an air of mystery about what's his background, what's his story, what's going on. And the film, it's just right after the intermission, I think, goes, okay, well, now let's rewind and tell you what it is. And then you realize what his big secret is, that his family was massacred essentially years earlier, and that his father, before he explodes, tells him, avenge us, you've got to get out there and do what you need to do. And so he has spent years, he's in this he's undercover for the long haul. It reminded me of a lot of this movie reminded me of like classic Hong Kong movies, but he is deep undercover. I'm not sure exactly what moment he was waiting for, but maybe neither did he until it arrived, and it was this moment. And then he eventually reveals his true self to be, as we've already mentioned, almost like this embodiment of Shiva. He is the godlike avenger who is going to come down and reap his revenge on the British, and does so in quite spectacular fashion. But I did want to talk about what I mean by how it reminds me of a lot of Hong Kong movies, because obviously, his whole arc is that he's an undercover cop, essentially, undercover agent, if you like. But the bromance, this central bromance, is a huge part of particularly like John Woo movies, like The Killer and A Better Tomorrow and stuff like that. And as I alluded to with Heat, which draws from similar films, is that you've got these two guys working on opposite sides of the law normally, but they're essentially the same guy. They're driven by the same things and the same needs, and they have the same moral code. Essentially, they're just coming at it from opposite ends. Right. And inevitably, these stories allow these characters to realize that sharing that common goal is more important than the laws to which they are supposedly adhering.
Oh, it's, we're talking about Hong Kong movies, Infernal Affairs. I mean, that's just classic, No, and that trope, I love, anytime you've got and sometimes it's them working towards a common goal, but other times when it's more Shakespearean in nature, the friendship, is going to go bad. I look at even Smallville with Lex Luthor and Clark Kent. They build this friendship for the first 3, 4, 5 seasons, but where this is gonna end up, and watching two guys in that situation that love each other, but realizing their roads are separating. I always said that's not the case here. In this case, it's more of the roads were separate, and they got back on the same path together.
Yeah. It's like their missions are adversarial, shall we say? Right. But then they don't know who each other are. They don't know the true identity. They're both working under assumed identity.
It was interesting to see Alison Doody, because I haven't seen her since Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I know she's been in a couple things, but I don't think her filmography has been prolific. So it was a pleasant surprise to see her. Although, again, it's funny how she played the Nazi back in Indiana Jones, and here she's again playing evil. This one's really evil. She is horribly evil, sadistic.
She's almost like a sort of a wicked evil queen stepmother thing out of like a Disney movie or something. She has no redeeming qualities whatsoever, and even she feels like she should be in Game of Thrones or something. She sits there almost on a throne at times, going, "Why isn't he kneeling down? And why isn't he doing this?
Why is there no blood yet? Give him a whip that has little metal things and tear his skin off."
Oh yeah, it's kind of crazy. And I know I haven't seen her in anything else. I think the only other thing I really know her from is A View to a Kill, where she's one of Max Zorin's henchwomen in that. So she's an evil sidekick there too. I think, hey, fair play. Some women just want to play the evil character. Some people do. It's that's all fine. Ray Stevenson was interesting because obviously he's done relatively big stuff relatively recently. He is one of the I can't remember what his character's name, but he's in the Thor movies. He's one of that triumvirate of sort of other warriors that kind of support Thor in Asgard. And he's also played the Punisher before in the Punisher Warzone, which is a kind of pretty schlocky B movie, but it's a lot of fun. It's quite good. So I mean, it's always interesting where you see recognizable sort of Western actors pop up in these Asian movies. But you get it. Everyone's got to work. You know, I'm sure the paycheck was decent and the experience. I think for a lot of actors like this, it's the experience to be on a production of this scale, you know, and to be a notable character. You want to play the villain in a massive Tollywood movie. Yes. Yeah. Although it was a long production, I don't know how long these guys were actually on set, but because it started shooting in, I think, 2018 or 2019 and got obviously delayed by COVID and all of that. And so it's been in the works for quite a long time, but they have been keeping busy, clearly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what do you make of these two leading actors? I mean, we've talked about just their screen presence, but how about their actual performances?
You know, I'm not near as familiar with Indian movies as I would like to be. I was first introduced to Indian film about not quite 20 years ago. I was in a production. I was playing Nick Bottom in A Midsummer Night's Dream. And one of the cast members asked me if I wanted to come to a Lagan party. And I was like, what's a Lagan party? And said, oh no, it's this beautiful 3 hour Indian film. It's grand. It's great. And what we do is I've got all kinds of Indian outfits, and we order a bunch of Indian food, and we watch it and we dress up. And whenever they dance, we dance. And I'm like, sign me up. That sounds great. And I brought my wife, and we fell in love with Lagan. And that was really my introduction to Indian cinema. And I've probably seen 2 or 3, if I'm honest, and probably I'm embarrassed to say. But when I heard about RRR, I realized this is something I really wanted to see. When I was hearing some of the reviews about it, I thought, I've got to see this for myself. And so sadly, I'm unfamiliar with 2 of the biggest stars here in Tollywood, but I thought they did an incredible job. I enjoy watching these 2. They have a natural charisma. They have a natural chemistry. I understand why in Indian cinema, they are, you know, gods among men. And I look forward to future films. And you've recommended a couple other films by this director, and I look forward to watching them.
Oh yeah, I've by no means seen all of his films, but I've seen both Bahubali, both parts of that. And he did a film about 10 years ago called Eager, which is an incredible revenge action movie about a guy who is murdered and reincarnated as a housefly. And so as a fly, he has to get his revenge on the man who killed him and get the girl and all the rest of it. And it's as insane as it sounds. But there are others in his filmography as well that I have yet. No, these guys, I don't think I had seen either of them work before, but they are incredible. I mean, particularly, I think Ram Charan as Ram. I thought his character, he has the more to do, to be honest. I think he has the more character development. He's the one who has to pretend to be a completely different person for so long. And I just thought, oh, he really brings it. You know, he really shows that a degree of versatility that unfortunately I don't think is afforded to Beam's character. I think Beam's character is a little bit more straight-laced. You know, this is my role. He's great at it, don't get me wrong. This isn't a slight at the performance or anything like that. The character is just is less complex, I think, whereas Ram's character has so many sort of hidden depths and hidden layers, and it has this sort of elaborate charade going on for so long. And I think Ram Charan pulls it off so well. He's got so much charisma. I mean, they both do. They're both incredibly charismatic. So he was the one that I was just like, oh, I want to definitely watch more of his movies. You know, he's pretty great. And I think, I mean, the other one to point out, I guess, is Olivia Morris, who plays Jenny. I mean, I don't know who she is. I mean, God bless. I don't know who she is. I don't know where she's from. I haven't seen her in anything. She's British, obviously. She was apparently in the BritBox series Hotel Portofino, which might be a masterpiece. I don't know. But again, you know, actors got to work, and it's an incredibly difficult profession to get gainful employment in. So when these roles come up, you take. And I think I read that she actually kind of came in at the last minute to replace another actress who had been signed and then dropped out. And so, you know, it's great. And now we've seen her, and now we know who she is. and half the world has seen this movie. So it was obviously a good move from a career point of view.
Very much so. So James, wrapping up this love fest that we have done for RRR, I think our
2 stars. I didn't like it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm on the wire. 3. First of all, what instrument should we be using here to grade this extravaganza?
Wow. I mean, that's tricky in and of itself. I'm trying to think of some kind, or just,
how many 1 pound sterling bullets?
Oh, wow. Okay. That's a pretty loaded.
It was great how it came full circle at the end, though.
This is true. Okay, fine. Yeah. 1 British pound bullets. Yes. Watch the film to find out what that's all about.
That's it. Yes.
Go on. You were in the throes of scoring. So
yeah, listen, this thing deserves 6 bullets. This one goes to 11. 6 1 pound sterling British bullets, because this movie, to say it breaks new ground is I'm somebody like yourself who I've seen movies. I've seen so many movies since I was a kid. It's wonderful to sit and feel that awe in a cinema again, to feel that joy, to feel this just summer extravaganza on film. And so I just want to give, obviously I'm not going to give 6 because 5's our maximum, but this film goes to 6 on a 5 scale. And that's where I'm going to turn it over to you.
That's brilliant. I mean, we have seen films this year that maybe have more nuance, more depth. Films like The Worst Person in the World spring to mind, or Everything Everywhere All at Once, perhaps. But that doesn't detract from this at all. I mean, I go back to the phrase that just stuck in my head from about 10 minutes into this movie. I was like, this is pure cinema. You can't do this any other way. It's like this or it won't work. If you, even on the page reading the script, you'll be like, I guess, a guy, 2 guys. It doesn't begin to, realize itself. You can't tell this story any other way than this big, this loud, this long, this colorful. This has got, I was trying to think of how to describe this movie to someone. I think it does have Zack Snyder's sensibility about creating gods, elevating men to god status. I think it's got this kind of beautiful, epic spectacle that Ridley Scott does probably better than anybody. If you go and look at his period epics, even the bad ones like Exodus, Gods and Kings, it's got this sense of scale. But like Gladiator of Kingdom of Heaven, it's huge. And then it's got the John Woo bromance in there. It's got the Baz Luhrmann showmanship. It's got the Michael Bay pyrotechnics. It's all of that combined, but in a wholly singular Indian voice. And and it is a shame to say that watching this on Netflix, my understanding is it's going to be on Netflix pretty much everywhere come early June. And that's great. So everybody has the opportunity to see it wherever they are. However, it's not the best way to see it. No. The best way to see it is in a packed theater, if possible, a packed crowd of Indian audience who will just help be your guide along the way of just the little cultural specificities along the way. But this is all embracing. This is cinema for everybody. I don't want to say cinema for the masses because that sounds derogatory somehow. This is cinema for everybody. It's so inclusive. It's so riotously entertaining. I'd give it a hail of bullets if I could. But it's getting full marks for me for sure.
That's fantastic, James. Normally we'd end on that, but something you said just prompted me, and I just want to give a little addendum to what I said earlier. In that, a lot of times you know me well enough that by and large, action films are not what makes my pulse go. Big explosions, car chases are not my cup of tea. Great dialogue is what makes it for me. And this film is action-packed extravaganza. There's a list of reasons why this should not be the sweet spot for me. And yet it's really a a hats off to the director, the screenwriter, and the filmmakers behind this film, that you were able to take a movie that I generally don't find to be something I would give max marks to, and you created a film that was able to do that for me.
But you couldn't give enough marks to.
That's it, and it needs to be said too, James, you and I saw this at the theater last night, the cinema, at a late night screening. They didn't start this film until 9:15 at night. Now, understand, most nights I'm in bed by 8 or 9 o'clock, and it didn't finish till after midnight. And this kept me awake. I was afraid that I was going to fall asleep. When you first said, oh, the screening is going to be this time of night, I thought, oh gosh, how am I going to do this? This movie kept us. It was
absolutely just on pure. You're running on pure adrenaline, and just the fumes of machismo throughout.
That's right. Yeah, I know. You come out of this film and you think, man, I could do anything. I could jump off a building and live. I could.
It's insanely sort of empowering in the most sort of positive ways.
Yes.
It's a movie, yes, about quashing colonialism and empowering or instigating uprisings of the people, but in such a wholesome way.
Yes. Yeah.
There's nothing antagonistic about it.
No, it's dealing with fundamental issues of justice. And no matter whether you're in India or the West or Hong Kong, justice or injustice is a ongoing issue. And so to sit in a film for 3 hours and watch justice unravel before us was a delight.
Absolutely. I couldn't say it better myself. And so I went.
There we go.
Oh, hang on. You know what? One thing we haven't talked about.
This movie's great when we have these many addendums. Go for it.
Yeah. Is what the title means.
Oh, yes.
RRR. And to some degree, they have committed to what it means. But like when the project was first announced, RRR was initially a kind of working title, and it was signifying the three main creative parties. There's Rajamouli, there's Rama Rao Jr., and then there's Ram Charan. So it was those three guys together, and so it was the RRR project, and we'll come up with a better title later. And then they never did. They kind of decided to stick with it. And then in the publicity campaign, they gave it the name. Was it Rise, Roar, Revolt?
Revolt, yes.
Is it in that order? I think.
And then in the various languages it's done, they gave reciprocal names that went with R.
Right. So and I love that about it, because it plays into how it's not cliched, it's not conventional, it's bigger than that, archetypal. Okay.
Oh.
And that's what I loved about this, is it plays into this kind of larger than life archetype of the story, of these characters. These are ultimate examples of these sort of different elemental forces, and just having a title which essentially can mean whatever you want it to mean. It's so universal, and it just it just plays into the whole thing for me. I just loved it.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Deep Dive Movie Reviews. Obviously, we've shown a lot of love for RRR, but what about you? What did you feel about the film? Have you seen it? Give us your thoughts in the description below. James?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, have you seen any more films by the stars, NT Ram Rao Jr. or Ram Charan? As I found out, this is the only film I've seen with either of them in. So I would love some recommendations about where to go next to explore more of their filmography. Please guide us in the comments. That would be most appreciated.
Yeah, that would be a big help, because we want to add to our Asian cinema playlist, and I would love to add more films that are recommended by you.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, we could do some more Rajamouli films. We should do Eager, perhaps.
Let's do that. Let's do that, because after you showed me that trailer, I want to watch it. So
absolutely, that sounds great.
Okay. Hey, till next episode, everybody. Have a good week, month, day.
5 minutes until you watch the next one.
That's right.
Good. Yeah. As you can see, it's fried our brains a little bit, and we're still.
You ought to be in pictures. You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be.